I would like to say that the recording, the presentation will be recorded, and if they want to watch it again or other people to watch it, they can
go to this.
Go to rightly trained,
trained.org.
and it will be on the men's ministries. Men's
It will be on the front page.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Good one. I'll come sit back here next to you, Gilmore. Yeah. I need an ally.
I'd like to welcome everyone tonight for coming to this very important workshop. And I think you are very passionate because only the passionate people come at this time at night. I would like to say welcome to all the people that watch live streaming and we're very happy to have them. Sometime during the session we'll have questions and answers. I think you might have my mobile phone number by now, so send me your questions and we'll ask Shannon the questions. Shannon, thank you so much for coming. It's a long way from Western Australia. We're excited to have you with us. Actually, it's the first time when we have someone in the Victorian conference that is well qualified in this department. So thank you so much for coming. Probably it will be around 1 hour and a half, somewhere around here, just for everyone to know. We'll try to be interactive, so there'll be questions, there'll be some discussions. I'd like to say thank you to Henry for recording. It's a fantastic job. Thank you so much, Henry. And the recording will be on his website, that is rightlytrained.org. So if you'd like to watch it again or invite other people to watch it, it will be on his website. So thank you very much, Shannon. I'm going to invite you to come at the front and just tell us how come you're in Victoria.
Yeah, okay, well, so thank you, Michael. Thank you for all the work you did getting this organised. Thank you, I really appreciate it.
This is my passion too. So.
Yeah, good one. So, yeah, I'm coming over to hopefully shed some light on men's ministries, which seems to be, I haven't met that young man. Nice to meet you. Which hopefully is going to shed some light on the topic and maybe give us some insights, some things that we can push into that we haven't tried before. My background is I've been in the building industry I've got a company that does fit outs and external cladding and things like that. So I've been in the building industry since I was about late teens. And I've been involved in youth and men's ministries for about the last 20 years or so.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Can you tell me where is your passion coming from? Because from my own experience, you can't work with men if you don't have a passion.
Yeah.
Where's your passion coming from?
Yeah. Well, yeah, my story is that I was raised without a father. So, very difficult to welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. Yeah.
So I will invite you to put your name tag so we'll be able to interact with each other. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Thank you. Okay, yes.
Yeah, so, yeah. Wanting to, having a lot of young guys work for me and all the troubles that I've seen them go through. And, you know, literally everything from, you could see every day there was something, a girlfriend, you know, a motorbike accident and some sort of family breakdown, relationship breakdown. You know, this is why they couldn't come to work, right? You know, so some of you that have hired people like that, you can know how difficult that is. Yeah, wanting to help them out. So that was sort of the combination between the youth and men's ministries.
Okay, yes.
Working with young guys, trying to make something, trying to help them find some way forward and try to launch out of their little life into their bigger life, you know. They're sort of stuck in the little parts of life, you know, living in a back room of their parents' house, playing video games, you know, just not launching, you know, and then knowing that there's so much more that they have to give. So an interest took on in mentoring young guys, trying to find ways of, empowering them really, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shannon. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Sure.
So, may God bless you, and you've got the floor.
Thank you, right. Well, welcome, guys. Yeah. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go over and shake a few hands here.
Very nice.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Shannon.
Sebastian,
good to meet you, mate. Good to meet you. And that young man, I haven't shaken his hand. Yeah, good to meet you, mate. Yeah, so, well, whatever I'm doing here, I want it to be relevant for you guys. So as I was just talking to Michael, my experience is building industry. That's where my work is. I've got a company there doing that, and then doing men's ministries for the WA conference. So I've been at that for a couple of years or so. And but my passion is with youth and men, mentoring, also helping men unlock their potential. So I've got tons of stuff we could talk about, but I would love it if you guys would ask some questions about what you want to know about. Like, where's your point of interest? Before we go there, let's pray. Yeah, Father, I just want to thank you so much for an opportunity for us to work together as men, find some ways of connecting, learning more about the model of Jesus' life as a man, and the way he took a men's group and showed us how to be men that are after God's own heart. So, we pray that you'll bless us in that time today and pray that it's fruitful. Thank you for your Sabbath hours as well. Amen. So any questions, that people would like to start with, and I'd like to just have a good go at answering whatever's on your heart. Even if you're doing something now and you want to just put it out there and and say, hey, this is what we're doing. What do you think? Is there any value add? I don't think there's a right or a wrong way.
This year we just trying to start men's ministry and in our church, and I've been just talking to all the men about men's ministry, what they would like to, what sort of programs they would like to have, and the feedback that I'm getting from them is they don't want the regular Bible studies.
Yeah.
So, what?
They don't want regular Bible studies?
They're only getting Bible studies.
Yeah.
So, what I decided is we have set up a date where we go on Sunday to come and meet and have a small devotion and go for a mini golf, go to the park and have like a barbecue. Just to get it started.
One of the things that men do really well is they use competition as a way of kind of like avoiding getting in touch with their emotions or perhaps the things that they're passionate about. It's easier for us to shoot darts or play pool or watch basketball or something like that, So I remember the first men's group we ever started was exactly the same. Let's do some light stuff and see why we're standing next to each other if we can let it evolve into some deeper stuff. That's pretty common. That's where a lot of men's groups want to stay. WA has a mixture of different kinds of men's groups. There are the ones that just want to meet like once a month and let's go and have something to eat and play pool and, or do something. They have a few kind of light questions. And then I've got groups there that go right into some really heavy stuff. And really, their intention is to not assume that we are all righteous, right above the middle line, and not assume that we are just all terrible and right below the line, right? This is actually men trying to discover who they are, because we know that we can't be perfect, right? Perfection's not going to happen, but we're not completely evil either. So some of the work that those deeper groups are doing is trying to discover what's good and what's bad in them at the same time. And that's the deeper work, you know. Yeah. So it really depends on what groups are ready for. I find different men are ready for different things. And it's going to be true for all of us here. But I would say that safety is the biggest key with men's group. Men need to feel safe. You know, so if I said to you guys, tell me something really deep about yourself right now, something you'd never tell anybody, you say, there's no way I'm doing that, right? But if we'd spent a lot of time with one another and we all made a commitment right now, raise your hand if you're willing to keep whatever's said here confidential today, we could actually get there. We could actually get to the deeper stuff, the healing work, you know. So it's really depending on who's leading your group, who's the older elder in your group. You know, I like the idea of, you know, we've got church elders, but we've got older men that if they're safe, will actually create a more safe environment for men to go to deeper places. Now, when the older men in the church are grumpy and angry and bitter about the way their life has gone, they don't create safety, they do the opposite. And they're still in competition with the middle-aged men and still in competition with the young warriors that are running around in our churches. So I think safety, particularly elders, they create that safety. I'm not talking about church elders. You know, an older man doesn't need to be a church elder to create that. He just needs to be willing to share his life experiences and give that level of okayness. You know, it's going to be okay. You know, the young guy comes to you, I don't know what I'm going to do with this situation in my life. My girlfriend's leaving me. An older man has that ability to say it's okay. It's called father energy. And every man here has the ability to share his father energy. Kings are really what's missing in our churches. You know, kings in the sense of the king energy in a man is that energy that blesses and affirms and actually builds him up. So, but I can talk about that more. You got me off track already.
The terminology using warrior and king and sage all that, is that coming from wild at heart? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. It's like it's drawing from a whole bunch of different forums. You know, men's work, men's ministries. You know, around the world has been quite dynamic over the last 10 or 20 years, but certainly engaging those archetypal pictures of the sage and the king and the warrior and the lover. I think it really works for men. And all the stories of the Bible all have them. You have a king, you have a wise man or a prophet, you have warriors. You also see the love. I mean, King David is a prime example of a man that embraced every archetype all the way through and was bold about putting it out as well. You know, I'm going to write a whole book about my lover, you know. I'm going to write a whole book about my warrior and my great men. I'm going to write a whole book about my kingship. And then I'm also going to tell you about myself as a sage, you know, as a prophet, as an older man reflecting back on my life and giving you my wisdom, you know. So that's a great question. I particularly like using archetypes. I think they're all the way through the Bible, and they work for men. As soon as every man, you know, we all watch movies, we've all seen movies. Every single movie has the archetypal pictures, the ruling image. That's what it is. It's the ruling image, you know, the one that captivates our mind. You look at it and you're so captivated by it. You know, it's why the image of the warrior works for young men, you know. Spider-Man, the Hulk, Captain America. It's why it's being reproduced over and over again. And then the lover, pornography. That's why pornography is such a powerful image as well. It's an archetypal image. Young men are looking at it going, I can't take my eyes off it. It's a ruling image, you know. So And as men in churches wanting to tackle men's ministries, we actually need to tackle those things. You know, how do we do that? How do we help men? How do we help young men or older men with pornography? It's an archetypal image. Men aren't going to just withdraw from it like that because you tell them not to, you know. And my finding is actually that if you just come to them and try to shame them out of it, they're just going to go into this white-knuckling mode, you know, like I'm hanging off a cliff. They'll hang on for a year. Welcome. Good to meet you, mate. They'll be hanging off a cliff for a year or two, maybe. That's if they're super lucky or super blessed. But they're going to fall off at some stage. Because something in that man has required, whether it's his need for power, if it's his need to be desired, for connection, whatever it is, something in that man is going to that archetypal image because he gets something from it, you know. And so we need to talk to that. We need to speak to that directly and go, you know, if for any of you men that have ever felt the pull of pornography, there's a need to talk to it, you know. What's going on there? What's happening for you? Because there is an underlying want behind that. There's an underlying want to see what's happening. I think the other thing about the warrior archetype with our young men is, you know, if you look at that mixed martial arts kind of craze, you know, the cage fighting. UFC. Yeah, that's the one, yeah. So everyone's getting into that. And our young men, it's good that they're in touch with their warrior, but when they over-identify with it, what happens is they think they're just warrior. There's no king, you know. There's no lover in that man. There's no compassion. There's no creativity. Nothing that can come out of him that can be used in a gentle, graceful way. So that's why I say, you know, you can't just let any man identify or over-identify with just one particular ideal, you know. That's why I like using King David, you know, because he embraced lots of the different archetypes, you know. But yeah, either a question that runs off the back of that or something new. Otherwise, I can just talk more.
Maybe you can tell us why you think the young warriors are leaving the church in hordes.
Yeah, I definitely want to answer that one. If you say to a young man, what's the image of a man in the church? If I was to ask you, for somebody on the outside, they're looking at a man that's in the church, what do you think he thinks of that man?
Quiet, lays low,
Soft, weak, quiet, lays low. Huh. All right. Warfare, right. Does that look anything like a warrior? Now, there's the answer to your question. So, like with the young men in my church, you know, I play rough with them. You know, like if we're gonna go out and play basketball or soccer or whatever, I play rough with them. You know, and I've got other guys in the church that play rough with them too. We don't just let them have it, and they actually see that we're strong in the way that we lead our families, the way that we work, and we're also the other thing that we've modeled to them that is. There's a surprising virtue in this, and that is moral courage. So it's the ability to sit with young men and say, if I'm sad or I'm angry or I'm scared, is actually saying, I am that now. I'm scared, I'm angry, and also the positive ones too. I'm actually full of joy, you know. Like, I don't know if you know this, joy is actually the most vulnerable emotion out of all of them. Nobody wants to show their outrageous joy because you're going to look like an idiot jumping around with your hands in the air going, yes. But there is something in showing moral courage as well. standing up for things, you know, like being the kind of men that will go out of their way to help somebody that needs it, you know. But it's also being authentic around emotions. I think that's really, really important. You know, we've sat with the men in our church, have sat with the younger men in our church, and they've talked about their struggles with pornography. They've talked about their marriage breakups, their failures in the workplace. They've just been open with them. And ironically, you would think they see weakness, but they actually end up seeing the opposite. They see strength. Because they say, what kind of a man could sit there and tell me about the struggles he's had in his marriage, the struggles that he's had in his Christian life, and even in his spiritual walk? There's a lot of value in going, you know what, there was a time when I just thought God was whatever, owning it, stepping into it and saying, this is what I really thought. And the young men actually start to go, these guys are warriors, but not the kind that are swinging around on a web or, you know, or running around with a shield saving the world. There's a different kind of warrior in there, and there's a different kind of respect that comes for a man that is as bold to say those things unashamedly. And ultimately what it does is it actually brings down the shame levels they've got. You provide I talked about safety. You provide a safe enough platform for that young man to start saying what's going on in his life. Because if he doesn't say it, and here's the big issue for all of us, if we don't actually say what's going on in our life, all we're doing is we're just keeping it back there hidden. And we're walking around and we're pretending it's not going on. I can say every one of you men in this room, and I say this in a very loving, kind way, every one of you men has got a little something back here that you wouldn't be able to tell me about. Every single man's got it. Every single woman's got it. But we've all got a little something back there we don't want to talk about. And real masculinity, Christian strong masculinity, is bringing that out in front and going, you know what? I got that. I got that, and not only have I got it, but I'm prepared to own it. Come hell or high water, you know, like, I'm going to own that. And that takes, and you can feel that right now, that takes immense courage. Imagine if we were all to lay that out on the table right now. That would be immense courage. And our young men need to see that. They need to see that kind of warriorship, you know, that kind of, I'm going to show you what I got, you know, like. So I think that's vital, and it's vital for providing safety. If our young men don't see that, if we don't play rough with them, if we don't let them know that we're not just nice guys, and I think that's a who's that guy from Wild at Heart? John Eldridge. Yeah, Eldridge. Yeah, I think that's one of his. Yeah.
So you're saying expose our guilt and use that to entice other people to expose theirs?
It's about being real. Like, you know, it's the same whole adage, you know, we come to church and, you know, I don't know about you guys, but when I went through the Adventist high school system, and there was all these people running around pretending they were perfect. You know, that's not helpful. I don't need, it's not realistic either, you know. I don't need people showing me how perfect they are. I know we've migrated a lot away from that now. But there is still this, like, this thing where men want to hide from younger men. What is your life experience, you know? And I actually think that really good eldership is when an older man, a safe older man, he doesn't share advice, he just tells his story. So a guy comes to you and he says, oh, I don't know what to do about this. He said, well, you know what? I can remember at your age I went through something that went like that. Because I find that when young men just get a whole heap of advice, they switch off. Oh, I don't know. You know, like if I keep talking like this, eventually you guys are going to switch off and you're not going to want to know as well, you know. But if I start talking about my life, then all of a sudden it gets a whole lot more dynamic, you know. Because the deeper I go with what I say about my life, the deeper you're likely to go with what you say about yours, you know. And that's countercultural. It's counterintuitive. We don't do that. That's not safe to do that. Yeah.
Can you mention again that people that are watching, there are quite a few people, can ask questions?
Yep.
Can send questions to my phone number?
Right.
Is that
Yes. Yep. Michael's mobile phone number. If you're watching and you've got a question, and just be aware, Michael's not asking me anything from really conservative people. That's a joke, all right? I'm joking. Keep bringing them. So yeah, thank you, Michael, and you'll let me know if something comes through you want to answer. I mean, shame is the biggest enemy of men. Women don't feel shame like men feel shame, right? Because men want to be respected. Like I can feel that now, you know. I come in here and I'm thinking to myself, I want to make sure that these guys get what I'm saying, and that you walk out going, yeah, I like listening to that guy, you know. I've got a bit of respect for what he had to say, you know. You know, my fear is that I'm going to come across making no sense, and you're going to go, oh, the guy doesn't know what he's talking about, you know. I want to feel respected. Every man likes to feel respected. So the opposite of that is shame. Now, there is a ton of shame that comes through, well, it might not be Adventism, but Christian culture breeds a lot of shame. You know, if you don't do this, you'll go to hell. I mean, that's the starting point. You know, that, you know, if you drink, or if you take drugs, or if you watch pornography, or you know, or any of these sorts of things, you're going to hell. You won't be in the kingdom. Right? That's shaming language, isn't it? You know, how many times a young man gets cornered and is going, yeah, we shouldn't have done that, or you could have done it better. Should-haves and could-haves, by the way, are always got shame attached to it, because the past tense, you can't go back and fix it, right? So all you're doing is shaming that person. Should-have, could-have. Why didn't you? So any time that there's shame coming on to men in the church, young men in the church, I think that's an instant repellent. The other thing is men, I mean, if we talked a little bit beyond young men, one of the biggest issues is for older men is there's nothing to offer their strength to, nothing to offer their talents to. You know, that's the problem with the church structure in a lot of ways. Is it's been set up very well for singing and praying and Bible study. You know, you talked about your guys saying they didn't want to do Bible study. If you took a bunch of guys, and this is true for guys I've worked with back in WA, you know, we take them out into the bush, all of a sudden they come to life. You just think, where's this man been hiding, you know? They've got something to push into, you know. Even with the young guys, you know, we'll take them out, we'll grab some motorbikes. There's a big farming community there. You know, we'll grab some motorbikes, and we'll let them terrorise a dirt track for, you know, a good half a day. Run all little competitions for them. They get an old bunky car, you know, tear that up and down, and they get to the end of the day, they're thoroughly exhausted. But the thing that they do next is they sit down and they get real. And that couldn't happen until they burnt off all that energy, you know, until they got out into the bush, until they felt safe. You know, and a lot of the time on those weekends, we take guys out and we say, absolutely no shaming, right? So a lot of these guys we're taking out are going into the country, they're city boys. They haven't ridden a motorbike. A lot of them haven't ridden a motorbike, haven't shot a gun before, haven't, you know, driven. Some of them don't have their licenses, right? So what we do is we get with them and we go, right, okay, this is how you do it. You know, we get an older guy to come with the younger guy and you go, right, you never shot a shotgun before? And have a bit of fun with it, you know? Like, might knock him on his butt the first time, but it's what he wants. He wants a story, you know? I want to tell you a story about what happened to me, you know? And then you take him back to the church, and then I think the trick is give him a job, you know? Give him something to do. We say to the guys, you can set up all the tables for lunch after church, you know? That's your job, you know? even saying that's a little bit idealistic because, you know, they don't want to often do those things, but I'm just highlighting that one of the issues is there's nothing for men to offer their strength to. My talents, you know. We've got to find a way to do church in such a way where they can either, one, offer their strength and their talents, or two, exercise their moral courage, be authentic, open, honest, you know, get those things from behind here and bring them out in front, you know, be able to openly own those things. It's not going to go away. Those things never go away, but if you can put it out in front of you and say, yeah, I have it, you can at least know when it's about to be triggered. You've got to learn, you know, a man's got to learn about that stuff. So I can talk more about that, but yeah, any other questions you guys want to branch into? Or make a comment on something that I said as well.
I'm just interested in a little of what got you into men's ministry.
Yeah, well, I said a little bit at the beginning, but it was, I was raised without a father. My dad was, he was in motorcycle gangs most of his early life, and he was a president of a club. I can't talk about that part, but he was a president of a biker club. He was a really rough guy. We're in good relationship now, but combination of growing up in a fatherless home till about 12, being in the building industry as well, seeing a lot of young guys just not launching into the bigger half of life, you know, they're stuck in the little half, living in a little room, playing on their little PlayStation, driving around in their bomby little car, you know, wanting what all other men have got, but not having the capacity to be any more than that. Completely unable to see what God sees in him because he can't see it in himself, you know. So that was my story as well, mind you, you know, completely drowned out with shame and thinking I was a failure, thinking I didn't have what it takes. That's an Eldridge quote as well, I think. You don't have what it takes. Yeah. You know, feeling like that, you know, like feeling quite worthless, you know. And then just getting to a point when I said, there's more than this. Like men, I've discovered men are just, you know, in the time I've been doing this ministry, the men are just amazing. You know, like I've met old grumpy guys, you know, and I'm thinking, oh, geez, this guy's painful, you know. And then I've sat down with him and really got to know him and just found this amazing man inside, you know, who has endured all kinds of suffering and trials, and there's actually immense wisdom in the man. He's never felt safe enough to actually let it out, you know. So that's kind of where it came from, you know. I wanted to believe that men had more in them, and to be honest, men have an amazing capacity to love, to nurture, even nurture and love other men in a masculine way, which I just discovered. You know, one of the big things that we do in WA, one of the things that is the most inspiring for me is we run initiation weekends for men. So, and it's an evangelistic tool as well. You know, we take men and we just say, right, we're going out and we're going to run an initiation weekend, which is just helping a man that basically there's a flow to it. He comes in the weekend, and like all initiation, it's a separation from the women, from the comforts of his life, you know, from the way he's been living, all the things that he feels well medicated with and everything, right? So we separate him. We go out to a place. There will be as many staff men as there are participants, right? So it's a 1-for-1. Often it's, you know, there's about 30 men and there's about 20 odd participants, 30 staff, 20 participants. He'll come out, he'll go, there will be a descent, there will be, you know, because all of a sudden when you take a man away from his comforts, you know what he does? He starts getting a bit agitated, you know. He starts projecting onto everybody. Oh, you're the dad, you're the dad that I didn't like, and you know, and you're the priest that gave me a hard time, or the minister, or whatever, you know. all of a sudden they start looking at you, right? But ironically, what happens is all those guys, all those participants, and no one's doing anything to them, mind you. All those guys, they form the tightest bond ever. You give them an opportunity where no men come in, no men come out, no women are there, and they actually have an opportunity to get down and really look at themselves. And then, so we'll do that sort of Friday night, Saturday afternoon, they'll do work on what's going on in their life, you know, what's really getting them down. You know, I'm talking about bringing this thing out from behind. And then on the Sunday, they learn how to bless each other, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to watch men bless each other. You know, just, or honouring is a better word for men. Men relate to honouring better, you know. I want to honour you for your courage. I want to honour you for your determination, you know, your resilience. You know, it's like it's just brings stuff out of men that's incredible. So I really love the initiation weekends. I'd probably talk to you guys more about that. Yeah. Is there any questions you'd like to ask? Yes, I'm entertaining them well then, right? Well, that minute is taking a lot longer. Yeah. No. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Yeah. No. Yeah. So the question is asking about more about initiation. Yeah. No, it's definitely not a head down the toilet thing. So most men have probably never really faced a trial where other men are watching. Right. This is really the key factor here. Men want to know, like I could have my wife tell me I'm the best guy in the world, right? I'm the hardest worker, I'm you know, the best at talking to men, or, you know, whatever it is, right? She could tell me till the cows come home. But until I hear it from you guys, it's not going to mean anything. You know what I mean? I have to hear it from a man, and particularly an older man. If I hear it from an older man who's got father energy, the kind of energy, the good father energy. And some of you may have really good fathers, and maybe some of your fathers are sitting here, I don't know. But the truth is that if a man is rarely initiated well by his father. It's normally the uncle or the grandfather or the man that takes him through his apprenticeship. You know, sometimes the father does well, sometimes, you know, and he gets his son there. But every man needs to have a moment, and this is what initiation is about. It's about saying you are a man. But there needs to be a test first. There's got to be some kind of a way for that young man to show his courage, to show the strength of his morale, you know, to be able to say, I'm strong somehow, right? So we give the guys an opportunity to, and this is why I was saying, when we model moral courage, you know, this authenticity, this openness, right? Bringing out all the stuff that we keep behind here in the backpack, you know. When we bring that out in front, you know, that's the kind of courage that we're asking them to find. Not the kind when they climb a wall or chop down a tree or scream over a jump in a motorbike or something like that. It's that kind of courage. And then the older men that are there, and doesn't necessarily need to be an older man, it can be a peer, then he can say, you know what I saw in you? I saw this. I saw courage, I saw determination, I saw this capacity to overcome, you know. And then he's able to say to him, yeah, I've seen the man in you, you know. And I know that you can go on and achieve all you want to achieve in life because I've seen this, this, and this. And it's such a powerful experience. I mean, every culture that has ever existed has done initiation. The Western culture is the first one that has decided we don't need initiation anymore. And a very interesting point is, out of every culture that's ever done initiation throughout the history of the world that they know about, right? These are cultures that never had anything to do with each other. They all set out to teach a young man at least four of the five that they know. Like, and it was really an ego attack. It was to bring down the young man's ego. And it's the same in our church. We need to be able to do that as well. Because if a young man doesn't lose his ego early in life, what will happen is he will set out to build up his private self, to make himself famous, to make himself important, and he will have no care for the community, right? That's what happens when your ego isn't put in check. For every one of us, it's the same thing. If your ego is not in check, right, you're not going to understand serving the community. An Aboriginal tribe down in the southwest of Australia, right, they used to initiate their boys by giving them a flint rock axe, right? So when the boy was the right age, it was the women in the tribe that decided when the boy was ready, right? So it wasn't necessarily his age. And some of you guys that are more from, might be from rich cultural backgrounds, you might have your own initiation stories, right? But the women decided when he was safe. So what they would do is they'd watch the young man, and then when that man was ready, the older men would take him away to where they had the flint rock. And that was dangerous because there's trees everywhere down there and bark and bush. And if he lit a fire in the wrong spot, their whole place was gone, right? So he had to be safe. But it was knowing when the young man was ready to serve his community. And it's the same thing today, that we've got all these young men trying to be worried about their own self-importance and not concerned about serving their community anymore, right? So the initiation is actually saying to the man, we're going to knock a little bit of ego out of you, and we're going to let you know that you are important to your community, that you are super valuable. Because in those traditional cultures, if the young men didn't come up, they didn't grow up and serve the community, that culture died. You know, they just died. If all the young men just ran off and looked after themselves. And incidentally, that Aboriginal tribe down there, when the settlers came, they wanted to clear land for forestry. They gave all the young Aboriginal men an axe and said, go cut down all the trees. Well, they didn't work for their initiation, and the whole tribe died out in less than 100 years. It was all over. It's just because they didn't have to earn it. There was no test. They just got given an axe, you know. So initiation is all about giving the man a trial, a test, a challenge. We base it on the Jacob story, you know, when he wrestled with God by Jabbok, right? So he was in a place where he could no longer manipulate, he couldn't lie or, you know, get his way out of things anymore. He's got an enemy behind him. He's got his uncle trying to kill him over there. He's got his brother wanting to kill him over there, and there's nowhere left to run, right? Every man is going to come to a place like that at some stage in his life. A divorce, a bankruptcy, a time in prison, an addiction. It's going to happen, right? But rather than let him have it happen, he can't do anything about it. We create a scenario where he can actually face his demons right there and then, right? So the Jacob story is that. It comes there, and that's what we base it on. That's what we tell the men on the weekend. You see, this is your Jacob moment. You get a chance to wrestle with God. That's the work that he does. God already knows everything about him, right? It's just his choice whether or not he wants to come and own it all and say, yeah, here it is.
What kind of activities would you suggest at the local level for the men's ministry?
Yeah.
Can I add to that one as well? I'm just interested in what men's ministry looks like in the local church.
Yeah. There's a handout here that I gave to that some of you may have, and I put this together because I wanted to show. I first of all want to say it's really difficult. You know, we're talking about changing culture. You know, we've gone so far in one direction, so far, you know, where, you know, every man's trying to run around and find his own little greatness, you know, get, you know, his own little, I mean, even in church, even in church, there is men running around, you know, trying to put together their own little salvation plan, you know. This is how I get to heaven. I do the youth class, I prepare really well done Sabbath school lessons, you know, I help out with with all the busy bees and da-da-da-da-da, and if I keep doing that and I keep ticking all the boxes, guess what, I'm going to get to heaven. Well, okay, that might work. Who else are you taking with you, you know? It's got to be a way of shifting that kind of thinking where I've just got to build myself up. I've just got to find my own way to heaven. I've got to feel, you know, this whole thing for men, it's really dangerous when we just get focused on self, you know. So this document is kind of an attempt, and I'm not going to say that it's going to solve all the problems, because this, yeah, like I said, we're trying to change culture. It's so difficult at the moment. But this is an attempt to try and get men connected with each other. And container building is the word. This is a term that we've used to create an environment with a bunch of men. And if we didn't have this camera on, and we were all sitting here together, this is exactly what I'd do with you guys tonight. I would actually do this container building. It's where we all sit in a circle, basically, and we face each other, and we do our work. You know, and it's kind of based on. It is based around the archetypes. This kind of sitting in circle. There are a few stages to it. The first thing that we would do is we would check in with each other, and that is basically. Yeah, I don't have it on one of these actually. Yeah, so we would check in with each other and say, well, this is my name and this is what I'm bringing today. Sadness, anger, happiness, compassion, you know, happiness, joy, peace, whatever that is. This is what I bring. And here's a small piece of context behind that. This is, you know, my name's Shannon. I'm bringing fear. I bring sadness. You know, the fear is about being in an environment where I don't know people, having to feel like I'm under a microscope, you know. Sadness is being away from my family for they're over on the other side of the country. I'd like to be with them, you know, to be honest. You know, but I carry sadness because of the distance of that. And I got excitement as well, you know, I got excitement about sharing this, you know. So that's a check-in. That's my authentic self, you know. I just go straight to the place of my soul, and I'm talking my soul language here, you know. I'm saying that's what's actually going on for me right now, you know. And every man would have a chance to do that. You know, we would follow the guidelines. You know, I always say this, it's good to follow the guidelines of these groups, because this is what creates the safety. So that's a love around. Being open, authentic with who I am. The next round we always go into is an integrity, and I want to talk about that because that integrity is saying I walk my talk, right? I'm a man of my word. Is there any man that doesn't get triggered when you say, "Are you a man of your word?" Now, if you couldn't say you're a man of your word, right, you'd feel something out of that. Because men want to have integrity. That is a core element of a man. That is, integrity is the archetype of the warrior, right? Anything that's not needed, anything that doesn't belong, I am going to cut it away, right? A warrior knows his boundaries. Really, really important, right? A warrior knows his boundaries and he respects them. And when I'm out of integrity with my agreements with people, so I break, you know, if I turned up here half an hour late, that's not integrity, right? You guys all sitting around waiting for me. Who's going to be down on me for that, right? You tell me you come in here and you turn up half an hour late, that's not integrity. If I break an agreement with somebody, that's a little bit of trust broken every single time. Every time I keep an agreement, I'm actually building trust. Now, there's a surprising evangelistic tool in this that a lot of people don't know about, is that a lot of men that attend our men's groups in WA, probably about a third of them are not even Christian. And the reason why they come is because they respect men of integrity. They come along and they go, these guys are men of integrity, and if they say there's a God, I'm going to sit down and listen to them talk about a God, because I don't know men that are like that. And that is a really strange blessing that has come from calling men to integrity. So we do a process around that. So we would check in, as I just did. We would all check with ourselves. So it's like, I think about my agreements that I've made with people, and they don't have to be promises, they're just agreements, right? If I say I'm going to be here on time, we're here on time. We check also our core values. Am I out of integrity with my core values? My core value is to not hit my wife, and I hit my wife, right? That's out of integrity with my core values. My core value is to not drink alcohol, and I've drunk alcohol, then I'm out of integrity. So what's that about? Now you've got to go find this thing back here. What's driving it? Bring it out in front, right? That would be some of the work we would do. We'd start with that, you know. And it's not a shaming exercise. It's just asking a man, what's the agreement that you made? Let him own it. You know, I said I was going to do this. Did you do it? Yes or no? No, I didn't do it. Okay, great work. You owned that you're not perfect, right? You owned that you made a mistake. Okay, let's keep going. What were the consequences? So there's really the integrity process has four main parts to it. It's the consequences. It's the attitude that you carried around that. It's the choices that you made, and then it's a makeup. So if I got out of integrity with an agreement that I made with you, right, and you thought I didn't know that, right, you think, oh, that guy just broke an agreement with me and he didn't do anything about it, I will come to you at some stage with a makeup. I would say, listen, you know what, I bought you a cup of coffee, but I want to let you know that I know that I broke an agreement with you and that was important to me. And I'm not going to let that slide, right? So I'm going to own it in front of you and say, yeah. And I want to recommit to you to say, if I do that, you know, in the future, I'm going to be on time, or I'm going to, whatever it is, you know. But when I look at you, I can be in my full power as a man, not just a nice guy going to church. I can be in my full power as a man. I can look you in the eye, and I don't need to be afraid, you know. And that's the kind of men that we want in church, the kind of men that are strong on integrity, you know. Look another man in the eye, no matter where he's from. No matter if he's 6'10" or whatever, you know what you're made of. And that's what we're trying to get these Christian men to get to. Know what you're made of, know what's going on inside, what's driving things back here, you know, so that when you look another man in the eye, you can hold his gaze and you know, well, I know who I am, right? I know what I'm made of, and I can look you in the eye, and I can do that with confidence. So that's a worry around, we give the men a chance to do something introspective. Would it be helpful if I wrote some of this on the board so we follow it a little bit? So this is lover, this is about, this is owning your feelings. It's about authenticity. Okay. This worry around, this is all about integrity. And that's integrity with agreements. And values as well. There's also a component with that where we actually, if you saw a man make an agreement, and this is another thing about not giving a man a pass. If you saw a man make an agreement, like he said, I am going to, you know, like I've seen some men do this, they say, I want to be the spiritual leader of my home. right? And so a man makes an agreement with all the men in the group. He says, I'm going to go home and I am going to do a I'm going to, do a little devotional with the kids every night before they go to bed, right? Now, if I heard that man make that agreement, what I would do is I say, listen, I've got some support to offer to you. And I say, well, would you be open to it? Because again, it's not about shaming men, right? We are going to ask the man, right? And say, are you open to getting offered support? And he said, yes. I say, I saw you make an agreement a week or two ago and you said that you would do that. Have you done it? That's actually loving the man when you do that. Like this whole thing about giving each other passes is just rubbish. Men don't need passes. The world is full of passes, right? If we're going to be strong Christian men, we can't give each other passes, but we've got to do it in love. It's really important to do it in love. And then he gets a chance to say, hey, you know what? I did miss a night. I actually did, and thank you. I want to do some work around that. So he'd do the integrity process. And I can give you the guys that integrity process too. It's just a write-up you can use. The next one is, it's a controversial word. We call it the sage round. And that's, in movies, that's your Gandalf, that's your Yoda. This is the wise part of ourselves, right? It's the introspective part. And so often we'll say to the men, if you wanted to work on something tonight, if you're aware, and generally how we ask men to be introspective is to say, what would you want more of? Or what would you want less of? What do you want to do less in your life because you know it's harmful? What do you want to do more of that you're holding back on? And so, this is a good way to search it out. Or where's a place where you feel like you've got no power in your life? It's not working out for you. So he gets a chance to talk about that. A lot of our men's groups have got some processes that they use. Sometimes, we put some names to them, like a king's court. If a man's really got an issue that he doesn't know what to do with, you can actually say to the guys, you say, right, I want to share my issue, and I'd like to get feedback from you guys, right? I want to, So the men respectfully ask, they say, are you open to hearing my feedback? Say, yeah, all right, yeah, give me your feedback. And sometimes a man pulls some great wisdom out of that, And a lot of it is biblical-based knowledge, especially when you're dealing with Christian men, They'll go, a guy will be having a problem with an issue with his boss. Matthew 18, mate. Let's look it up. Let's read it, right? I hope I got that right, Matthew 18. Like how do you diffuse a disagreement, right? And it's just biblical principles that a lot of guys have worked with. And so this is about introspection. Looking inside, it's the same for men. If you can't give yourself grace, if you can't give yourself forgiveness, how do you think the creator of the universe, how are you going to accept it from the creator of the universe? So just ponder that for a second. If I can't give it to myself, what makes me think I'm going to be able to accept it from the creator of the universe? I know idealistically I can feel it, I can read it, I can see it in the Bible, I can understand it, but can I feel it? I need to be able to give forgiveness. I need to be able to get the shame monkey off my back if I'm going to feel whole and completed in such a way that I can really understand the love that my Creator has for me. Some of this is about that. It's actually getting rid of the shame, And then this is the one that is really missing. This is the king. This is all about blessing and affirmation. This is actually what we're missing the most in the world right now. We have so few kings that it's crazy. Blessing, affirmation. This is, and every man here is a king. Every one of us, right? You've got children, you've got a home, you've got your own finances, you've got a car, you've got a job, you've got to look after things. Every man in here is a king. Every one of us has been given an array of blessings from God that we need to manage well. We need to rule over well. We've all got our own little kingdom. Most of us have probably got a little queen and some princesses. I've got a princess up the back over here, you know. And I've got to be a good king. I've got to be a blessing, loving, affirming king. And my job as a good king, this is the father energy right here. And the father energy, right? Jesus talked about the Father, God the Father all the time, right? He always talked about God the Father. And this Father energy is never condemning, never shaming, never. If any shaming, condemnation is coming up in church, that is not from the Bible. That is never from the Bible. This Father energy is always blessing and affirming. It's loving, it's kind. It's what's missing from our young men, you know. And what the king does is he has the ability to bring all three of these together. Right? He brings all three of these together. And Jesus modeled all of this. All of this. You know, we know Jesus was a lover, you know. He let his feet be washed with perfume in the woman's hair. He let the little children come to him, right? We know Jesus was a lover. We know he had a very strong love, and he was very authentic with his emotions. You know, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, you know, and they left him. He was sad, you know. A warrior, oh man, you know, like a guy that can make a whip and he can turn up the tables. He was a warrior in him. He could stand up to all the Pharisees, right? There's no doubt in my mind that Jesus had a strong warrior, right? I don't think anyone could dispute that. His ability to be introspective, to see what was happening in people's lives as well, you know, to look into somebody's life. You know, when, you know, he could look into somebody, like the woman at the well, he looked into her life, right? And he said, you know, I see this is going on in your life. I want you to see it as well. The Bible is constantly asking us to be introspective. It's constantly asking us, hey, take a look at yourself. Have a look what's going on. When all the Pharisees came out and saw John the Baptist, right? And he said, prove to me how you are saved by the way you are living your life. What was he asking them to do? Look inside, man. Look inside and tell me, how are you saved? You know? And then the king. We know he's a king. That he blessed, he affirmed, he had the father energy. It's why that's why the fishermen, the disciples, you know, they all came to him, you know, like this guy I can trust. So that's the model of Jesus. That's the model that he left us to work with. That's why I like it. Somebody was just kind enough to come and put some good words around it that we can use, you know. But that's the model. If he was something else there and I missed it, you know, I want to hear about it too.
Shannon, if someone comes to you, one of the guys comes to you and says, look, I've had this problem in early childhood, it might be sexual abuse or something. How do you deal with something like that? Fall into the sage category, I assume.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that sort of stuff? Like, what do you
Yeah.
go and see a counsellor for?
Well, you know, there is room for that. I think there's room for that. Yeah, I would definitely, there's some good Christian counsellors that I know of that will, you know, if there's a guy that needs to do some good work. There's actually something really sweet about when a man does his work with other Christian men. You know, when he actually comes out and it's just, I mean, again, it's remarkable when a man comes out and says, you know what, I was abused. And I've heard this story, you know, so many times now. A man comes out and he says, I was abused. And there's a very sweet thing that we can do as men, and we call it just holding space. So holding space is when you don't try to rescue, you don't try to fix, you don't do anything other than let the guy say what he needs to say. You know, half the problem with a lot of those guys is they never got to say it. They've lived in the fear of being shamed so much around that thing their whole life that the fear of being shamed is actually the biggest thing a lot of the time that's going on. You know, that when he actually gets to own it and just go, you know, this is really how I feel about what happened. sometimes a really surprising thing happens. You know, the men can step into this father, step into this king energy, and go, you know what? I want to bless you for your courage. You know, and actually, there is. When somebody holds something like that to themselves, and I want to be sensitive about this because it's not something that. It's hard to imagine unless you've actually been through it, right? So I want to be sensitive about this. It's not the answer, right? I'm not proposing that this is an answer. But if I take my woundedness and I hold on to it and I don't offer my story to God, right? If I don't find a way to weave my woundedness into God's big story, into His master plan, the plan of salvation, right? If I was an alcoholic and I don't go and reach out to alcoholics after I've recovered, if I was a drug addict and I don't reach out, or if I don't tell my story about overcoming, right? Then my woundedness is just a festering little wound that I just probably could get personal counselling for the rest of my life, right? But when you encourage a man to actually step into his woundedness and he allows God to take it, right? That whole story, everything about that woundedness. When you allow a man to tell that story and other men draw strength from what he said, then that story gets weaved in with God's story. It gets weaved into the big story, the universal one. And then what happens is that wound becomes sacred. You know, that wound has an opportunity, I should say, to become sacred. You know, all of a sudden my, this shame and patheticness that I felt, this unworthiness that was happening, actually becomes a strength. You know, I've got a good friend of mine back in WA, and he runs rehab programs. Some of the guys that are the most effective are the guys that come out of rehab and go back and work with guys in rehab back at the start. Unbelievable, you know, they just know what these guys are feeling. They know what they're going through, right? Because they've been there. They have an inside knowledge to how to talk to this guy, where other counsellors and social workers are coming in and they're going off their face and losing their lolly and kicking things over. This guy comes in. He's got no training. He's not a pastor. He's not any, he doesn't know anything about counselling. He comes in and he just sits with this guy. They light up a cigarette half the time. They light up a cigarette and he has a chat with him. All of a sudden, he's calm in 5 minutes and they're talking and he's being rational and they're working together. But that's because the man has taken his wounds and he's offered them to God. He's gone, how can you use me? He said, well, I want you to go there. And I think that is probably one of the key things that we're telling to young men. If you only build your life around your private self and you don't offer your story, your woundedness, your insecurities, all the places where you felt you weren't strong enough, you don't offer that to God and you don't weave that into His big story, it's just a festering wound. And it stays that way. I don't know if that answers some of your question. I'm trying to give some insight to it. You know, I know I can't answer everything exactly the way you'd like right now, but I'm trying to give some curiosity to more than just this moment. You know, so and I'm aware that some of the things I'm going to say, it's all I'm wanting to do is create curiosity at the moment. So yeah. Yeah, I will. Thank you, yes, for bringing me back on track. So yeah, there is so the separation. There's a descent. So this is like a looking into The descent is going into, this is the easiest way of describing, it's getting down into the basement of the life, right? You know, like I like to describe it as the basement, or for most men who haven't been initiated, it's like your life is a room, right? And the lights have been off. And you're getting around and you can see, oh, there's the bed, you know, there's the chest of drawers, you know. You kind of know where everything is, right? But the descent is going into the closet, right? It's getting into the dark, deep, dirty places of the room, of your life, right? It's getting in the closet. It's getting right behind all the boxes. It's climbing under the bed. It's getting in the back corner. You know what I mean? Like owning your whole life. It's getting it all out there, right? That's the descent. Then there's a challenge. There's some kind of a challenge there. This is the wrestling with God in the Jacob story, right? This is where you got to really fight against your own demons, you know, go, what's going on here, you know, like, you know, I got a real lustful desire going on in me and I don't know what it's about, right? This is this, you know, or I've got an anger, I got a temper on me that's running off the Richter, you know, and I'm yelling at my kids and I'm losing my stuff and I don't even know why, right? Or I'm in traffic and I'm losing my, or this is depression. You know, sometimes this is depression. You know, this guy just goes, I just can't seem to lift myself out of this, you know. I'm always stuck in this depressive mood. You've got to fight against that, right? There's something to push against now. This is half the problem that we've got, you know, as men. We haven't been through this. We've never been separated from our comforts. We've never had a chance to safely descend into, you know, our life, to crawl under the bed, you know, to look in the cupboard, as I said, right? To get to the real nasty stuff. Never been safe enough. And then we've never had a chance to push against it. You know, I want to fight against it. I got something this is where God actually gave Jacob a chance. You know, it was so merciful, really, when you think about that story about God and Jacob wrestling together. God could have dropped him in a second, right? Everyone knows that. He could put the hip out in the first 5 seconds, right? Go, boom, now you're gone, right? That's it, it's over. He's merciful enough to say, come on, give me everything you got, get it all out of your system. There's something, man wants to fight, right? You know, all of you have been a young man and you want to wrestle your dad, right? Every man wants to have a fight, man, you know, like there's something he wants to push against. So this is that. And then this is the blessing time. This is the homecoming. And the homecoming is when a young man was initiated and you would bring him back to the community, right? He's different when he comes back. He's ready to serve the community. Yeah, it's like, you guys any familiar with that term Wanderlust? You know, it's a German term, Wanderlust. It's like that the man needed to leave the home and go somewhere else to discover who he was. But when he came back, he was different. He was always different when he came back home. He knew who he was, and he knew what his gifts were, and he knew what he had to offer to the community. When he was at home, he didn't know. He had to leave, and he had to come back so that he could find out what his gifts were. And this is what the initiation's about. When the man comes back home, you know, and this homecoming too. This is the building up of the man again, you know, like he's faced his demons, you know, he's gone through some real trials, you know. He's found all these things inside of himself that were subconsciously driving the ship, you know, steering the ship. And now the older men have seen what he's made of, you know. They've affirmed it in him. They've blessed it in him. I said, you know what? I see that. And he goes home. And he walked in here going, do I have what it takes? And he comes out here going, yeah, I got what it takes. No, he may not know it for the whole of his life because initiation's a first step, right? It's a one step. But it's a first step into manhood. Like baptism is a first step into the spiritual journey. It's not the last step, you know. And that's another whole issue, you know, like when I was talking about elders have entered the second half of life. They've entered into the second half of of the masculine journey, of the spiritual journey. You know, we keep thinking that that baptizing people is the entire answer, right? Where's the rest of the spiritual journey? Where's sanctification? You know, where's that sanctification? You know, emptying ourselves of self, right? But we need encouraging men to come on that part of the journey too, the sanctifying part, the second half of life, spiritual journey. That's a really important part as well. And I find the elders have done that. Some of you, I'm sure there's men here that are well and truly in the second half of life, you know, spiritual journey. You know, there's some really good things that characterize elders, but don't get me started talking about elders. I can talk about them for a long time. Because I truly believe, until we've got elders, we've got a real cultural problem. Every culture has had good elders, right? We are the first culture that reveres a teenager over an elder. That's a major, major issue, man. You know, like Eastern cultures would never accept that. You know, Chinese culture, Japanese culture, could you see them ever accepting a teenager, a Justin Bieber? You know, it's going to happen there as well, I'm sure, right? But, you know, who here comes from cultures where there's a strong elder in the culture? Any of you? Yeah, you. What's your background? Fijian. Oh, yes, right. So you guys do initiation, right? You've got elders? Yeah, right. Now circumcision. You know what circumcision is? Wounding a young man in the place where he feels he's the greatest. Think about that. That was one comment that I read from a favourite author of mine. Let's wound a man in the place where he thinks he's the greatest, his penis. Right? Is that not bringing down the ego or what? Like, sorry? They use bamboo, do they?
They use the bamboo.
Oh, wow, really? Goodness. Oh, that's rough. But elder culture is what keeps the community safe, you know? If you don't have good elders, you don't have strong elders, I'm afraid everything falls over after that. There's a kind of a lineage, you know, with all this as well. You know, your sages are your advisors to your kings, okay? You know, a lot of us sitting in this room would be in a king phase of life, you know. This is, you know, it's probably, I hope I don't offend anybody, but probably late 30s to about mid 50s. You're in a real king phase of life, right? You know, sort of late 50s, 60s and over. You're in a sage phase of life, right? You've got warriors. You know, warriors and lovers come at the same time. You know, this is a similar time. You know, but this is like late 30s down, warriors and lovers. You know, young man always wants to learn to fight for something. You know, he wants to carve out his own place. You know, a lot of the time when young men leave church, you know, young people don't know who they are, right? So all they can tell you is what they're not. Well, I'm not that nice guy, you know, or I'm not the kind of guy that's gonna come along and help with the busy bee and tickle the boxes and be a good boy. I'm not. You notice that? They only tell you what they're not. They don't tell you what they are. So they've got to make, half the time they're making up something about who they are, you know. They're, you know, they're doing their hairstyle different, you know. I'm not like you, I'm not like you, I'm not like you. I've got to make up my own thing, you know. I do my hair differently, I'm going to wear different clothes, I'm going to wear my pants down here, you know. Bless them, of course, you know. But they're trying to create their own identity, you know. I don't know, I think I did that when I was their age as well. You know, we were wearing the baggy basketball shorts like Michael Jordan, and we were creating our own little identity and culture. But young warriors, they don't know who they are. They can only tell you what they're not. And when they look at church and they see that church is just full of nice guys and and guys that don't stand up, and they're thinking they're not courageous, and you know, all those things that we said before, right? You guys told me what it was. I didn't tell you. You said what, when I asked you, what's the image of a Christian man? They look at that and they go, I got no place there. I got nothing to do with that. You know, and they want to meet a girl. You know, this is the warrior lover here. This is a tough time, you know. They want to meet a girl. They want to fall in love. Young men have a deep desire for connection, to be you know, they want to be desired. They want to feel connection. They want to have acceptance. You know, you talk about getting power. You know, power and acceptance are the same thing. Acceptance is power, right? If you're, I said Justin Bieber before, right? If you're as famous as Justin Bieber, you think he feels powerful? He feels powerful because he's accepted, right? My whole world accepts me, right? That's why I've got power. Yeah, that's what they want. They want to feel accepted. Anyway, I'm running off on tangents here. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Shannon, we should talk about age, but what about maturity?
Oh, yeah.
That would adjust the levels quite significantly, wouldn't they?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because these stages I was talking about, the actual key factor is not age, it's actually suffering. Yeah. You know, like, the reason why sages are more loving and kind and accepting and non-shaming and non-judgmental, because they're the oldest and they've suffered the most. You know? They've been through the hardships, you know. Actually, you know, a lot of the trials of my own life, you know, my father, he wasn't on the scene when I was born, but the part I missed out was he date raped my mother. And so she was very, very cold to me my whole childhood. And I suffered a lot with that, you know? Like, that was really, I went without a lot of acceptance. It was really, really difficult. It was a very lonely childhood. And because of that, I actually matured through these stages quite fast, you know? And it was, again, you know, I talk about using my story and offering it to God. Well, that's what I did. I said, I'm not going to just sit around and mope about this and go and get therapy all the time. I can give this story and it can be strength to somebody, you know? And I'm going to use my own strength too. I'm not going to run around saying I don't have what it takes, I don't have what it takes. I'm feeling worthless. I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life, right? I'm going to offer it to God, and I'm going to stand on the strength that I can gain from knowing that my story is now locked in with God's big story. It's got a purpose. It wasn't for nothing. My sufferings and my trials matured me. So, yeah, and quite often you'll see it in young people that have got cancer. You know, young people who have got cancer can be so wise, you know, so forgiving and merciful and graceful, you know, like all of a sudden it's like, you know, yeah, I know I'm going to die in a week or two, you know. Yeah, I'm sad about that, you know. And yeah. But there's this calm. It's the kind of calm that somebody in their 80s has when they're on their deathbed. You think, how can you have that, you know? But the suffering's been dosed out so early in life that a 12-year-old can be, you know, in this place. You just think, man, that's amazing. So it's definitely, you know, I used ages, but yeah, it's trials. And I actually believe that that God doesn't mature us by giving us successes. I actually believe God matures us by giving us opportunities where we can learn from our failures. You know, the more trials we go through, the more sufferings we have, the more God grows us, you know. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I've rarely learnt much from my successes. From my failures, I've learnt enormous amounts of things from, you know. That's where I got my... I think that the second half of life journey, you know, the second half of life spiritual journey, like, you know, when you're a young person, you ask that question, do I have what it takes, right? You know, you guys will get this. In the second half of life, around 40, you go, is this all there is? That's the big one you ask when you're in the second half of life. Is that all there is? You know, there's got to be something more, you know? And that's where, that's Nicodemus. That's the rich young ruler, right? You know, Nicodemus, he's coming to God, and he's coming to Jesus, and he's going, so, yeah, you know, I'm the boss over here, and, you know, I'm super successful over there. Same as a rich young ruler, right? Yeah, you know, I've got all the wealth. I've got, you know, I've kept all the 10 Commandments my whole life, you know? Like, yeah, Jesus, look, I ticked all the boxes, right? You know what he's waiting for? Everyone knows what he's waiting for. He's going, yeah, Jesus, you're waiting for him to go, well, here's your fiery chariot, ride it to heaven, right? And he goes, instead of saying that, what does he say? He goes, sell everything, come with me. Or he says to Nicodemus, you've got to be born again, brother. You know, like, you know what he's saying? He said, you've made it to the top of man's world, right? You just made it to the top of man's world. This is where most of us are at. Right? 90% of the men in our church, this is where we're at. We're at the top of man's world, or we're trying to get to the top of man's world. We've attached all of our identity to the things that are outside of ourselves, right? We've attached it to our house and our car and our wife and all the things that make us look successful and nice clothes, you know. They're all wonderful, right? But John the Baptist, you look at that life, right? And compared to the rich young ruler Nicodemus, right? Where's John the Baptist? You know, he's out there in an animal skin, standing in some water, no pulpit, no Bible, no church, no choir, no hymn book, right? What's he doing out there? What's he doing out there? You know what I mean? This is the second half of life's spiritual journey. It's letting go of structures. I'm not saying let's all run out of the church and go get an animal skin and start eating wild honey, right? But I'm saying if you're connected so much with the structure and trying to hear God outside of yourself all the time, you know, like I can't hear God. No, you see people, they say, well, I can't hear God's voice unless I've got the Bible open to my favourite verse, right? Is that favourite verse inside of you still? It is. You don't need to open the Bible to see it. You don't need to. You remember it's in your head, right? I'm not saying let go of those things. I'm just saying the model of John the Baptist was to get on the second half of life's spiritual journey and let go of structures. He was saying, let's get out there, you know. Let's understand that there's a time and a place for us to get together as people and look at each other and actually feel God working through one another. Like every one of us is a conduit, you know. I'm a conduit for God's love, grace, mercy, forgiveness, you know. That's the thing I want to teach men, to become a conduit that is open to channel all of that all the time. You know, this is the Father energy, the blessing energy. I've got to be a conduit for God's love. I hope that's not offensive to anyone. You know, I think that's a really good thing. I think that's what God's calling us for, you know. To actually, you know, when Jesus said, if you've seen the Father, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, right? He was actually saying to us, you know, if there's been any confusion about what the Bible has said or what stories have been translated over the past however many thousands of years, right? He's actually saying to us, look at me and I will clearly show you what it's all about, right? That's what he's saying. When you see my face, you're seeing mirrored in me God. That's what you're seeing, right? And he's saying, if there's any confusion, right, then watch my life and you're going to get it straight. If anyone misconstrued a story or didn't tell it right or whatever happened, right? He's just saying, look at me and you'll get it. And that's what the disciples did. They looked at Jesus and they mirrored from Jesus what they saw. And that's how we've come to being who we are thousands of years later. You know, we talk about feeding the poor and healing the sick and all that sort of thing. That's what God mirrored to us. That's what God taught to us. John the Baptist is a really wild character in the Bible, right? It's hard to reconcile, you know. How does that work? But I love John the Baptist, the wild man of the Bible, you know. Because I think in every man there is a wild man. There's a part of us that is wild. And Jesus actually gives us a blessing by putting a wild man right in the middle of the Bible, of the story of the New Testament. He just whacks John the Baptist in there and goes, this is the guy I went and got baptized with, right? The wild man. Doesn't make any sense, right? But he's appealing to the wild man in every single guy, that part of him that's just out there. Anyway, any more questions? Oh, and I would love for someone to challenge something, disagree with something. I don't want to open the floodgates, of course, but if there's something that doesn't feel right, ask another question. Like, let's talk about it. I'm just offering you the wisdom of whatever has come to me over the last 10 or 15 years. Yeah?
With the initiation kind of approach, is there, does that just appeal to a subgroup? Is it a broader appeal? Do some look at that and see it as some sort of contrived thing? What's the...
Yeah, that's a good question. Really good question. Yeah, it's... I first discovered Initiation Week, an Initiation Weekend. I went with a secular group of men. It was the first time I got introduced to it. But I found God amongst it, And I have noticed that men are quite resistant to it. Because of the fear. It's that safety thing again, we still come back to safety. Like, we've probably had about, I don't know, maybe 12, 13, 14 pastors do it in the WA conference. And, for a lot of the guys, it's really lifted their ministry, like, yeah, it's a certain kind of guy that goes. But I would say this from a ministry point of view. If you have not faced deep sadness, fear, or anger inside of yourself, or even joy, for that matter, when people come to you and they are running deep sadness, anger, fear, right, the standard way that a pastor will respond to that, he'll go, "You got mental health issues, get away from me." That's what they actually do most of the time, right? I've spoken to men that have felt that way, right? But when you've touched that in yourself, and this is the beauty of an initiation weekend, if you can get guys to go on it, if you've touched that in yourself, when a guy comes to me, and I've had a guy will, he'll come and see me about something, and he walks in. I had a guy not long ago, he was looking at a marriage breakup. He walks in, he comes up to me. He is already hot as hell, like he's angry and he is crying uncontrollably and he's sad and he's scared, right? And he comes up to me and he's like in my face like this, right? And he is just going off. And, I talk about holding space. I didn't try to fix him. I didn't react to anything that he was saying. Because when he looked at my eyes, he saw compassion because I've been there with my own stuff. From this kind of experience, this initiation experience. And when he saw that in my eyes, he saw that I had compassion for that. He just settled down, He went, you're not trying to expel me, you're not trying to get rid of me, you're not trying to transform me or convert me or shut me down, you're just letting me have it, right? And that's what I've seen in good elders as well. I've seen good older men take a young man who's just off the Richter, he's scared, he's just broken the law, or he's broken up with his girlfriend, he doesn't know what's going on. And a good elder, he doesn't try to do anything with him. He just says, let's just go sit down, mate. Let's just start. But he holds him with strength. He looks him in the eye and he holds him with strength. And that young man knows there's something different. There's something about this guy that's not the same, And I've got a lot of people in WA conference, there's a lot of men that are really scared of all of this whole thing. This is really, really scary. And there's a bunch of men there that they want to give me, they just want to run away from all of that. That's scary, and I don't blame them. I still find it scary. I still get scared of it. We go out on weekends, and we take men for a Christian initiation weekend, and sometimes there's 70 men there, and they're all got emotions running on all kinds of places, and I get scared, man. I get really scared to stand up in front of them and try to lead them in a way that is strong, but compassionate, with grace. That really scares me. But I see the value in it, so I keep going. I see men actually having transformed lives because of it. There's always going to be a percentage that won't do it, to answer your question. That's just the way it is. It's like there's a percentage of men that won't come through the church doors, and it's because it's not safe for them, or it's irrelevant. That's, what, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. This is why I talked about elders, right? If you don't have good elders, it's really hard. Like a young warrior is not going to meet an old man in the church, right? An older man in the church and go, wow, you're really, I find you like a really cool older dude, right? I want to hang with you. It's not going to happen, right? But when young warriors want a cause, they want something to swear their allegiance to. That's why I like using this model, right? Young warriors want to swear their allegiance to something. Cowboys, and I think Eldridge talks about cowboys as well. Cowboys are looking at these guys in their 20-somethings, right? And they're going, I'll do whatever those guys do, right? These guys want to swear their allegiance to somebody, right? They want to look at an older man's life and go, when I'm 45, I want to be like that guy, right? He's strong, he's confident, yet he's merciful and gracious and forgiving as well, right? That guy, I feel good, I feel safe, right? That's the key word. I feel safe around that guy. And this king will use these older elders, He actually comes to them looking for guidance. These men are still giving him the father blessing, the father energy. We know Jacob and the older patriarchs would give the blessing down to the sons, right? This is the same thing that's still happening here, right? It's on a microcosm. It's like a microcosm of that, right? Because we're not giving them land and all that sort of stuff. But that's what's happening here. That's the psychology of it. We still need that. These guys are the closest to Jesus because they're the closest to the end of their life, right? They're the most surrendered. They're the most emptied of ego because they are the closest to death. And death is the ultimate surrender, right? So the way it happens is when you've got a good church running and you've got elders and you've got kings that are using these elders well, they are in alignment with one another. What you do is you actually opening the access between the warriors and the sages, the elders, right? You actually get this access because, believe it or not, warriors and elders are natural allies, right? Because the warriors have got the energy and the elders have got the wisdom. You put those two together, man, they're dangerous. They're absolutely dangerous. And I've seen it in my own church. When the warriors start hanging out with the elders, those guys can get some stuff done, They're just amazing. But they need the kings in the middle to access it. Because the kings are the ones that they want to be like, And at the end of the day, we are all trying to model Jesus to each other, It's what Jesus modeled the Father to us, right? He modeled the Father to the disciples. The disciples went out and modeled Jesus to the people they met. We're trying to model Jesus to the young people in our lives, right? To our children, this is what we're doing. It's a modeling evangelism there, and people just don't care about how much we know until they know how much we care, right? You've heard that saying before? You can talk to you blue in the face, but until you've actually sat with somebody and you've actually said, you know what, I want to hear it all. And I'm going to love you through it, and I'm going to give you grace through it, and you won't feel shamed by me. Until that happens, we're getting nowhere. But that's, to answer your question, that's how we get there. I don't know how we're going to change the culture on that.
So when you use that word elder, you're not talking about church elder, you're just talking about
No.
an elder equivalent in a tribal situation.
Well, I'm just talking about a man that is... he's experienced, he's done his work, he's lived his life, the sort of things that a man at 25 just about has a heart attack about, an elder looks at and goes, been through that, I've done it, it's all right, mate, don't worry about it, it's okay. I just call it okayness. That's what a good elder does. He just looks you in the eye and he goes, mate, it's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay because I'm here with you, and I've been through it. And whatever we're gonna go through, we're gonna go through it together. It's like these old farmers that I run into over in WA. They've seen everything. They've just seen everything. They've had the tractor break down there. They've been bogged in that four-wheel drive, I don't know, 100 times. They've, everything's gone wrong. Everything's happened. They've seen it all. And they, when they say to you, it's okay, you believe them, I know you know that. So, something I wanted to say about elders, I did want to say something about elders that I think is useful. Elders know how to break the rules. They know the rules so well that they know how to break them. How Jesus broke rules? He just did that sometimes, right? He had that elder energy. He knew what the rules were made for, so when they got broken, it wasn't a big deal. People who are still stuck in the first half of their spiritual journey, right? When you break the rules, they're just like, whoa, you can't break the rules. That's where the Pharisees were, right? They were living in the first half of life. They're back there thinking, all connected to the structures. Jesus was going, you don't get this, right? David knew as well, right? I can eat the showbread, we can pick the corn, we can pull a donkey out of the mud, because I know what the rules were made for. That's what an elder's got, right? He knows the rules. He knows the rules so well he can break them. The other thing is, an elder is able to, he knows truth when he sees it and he hears it. It's spiritual discernment, it's spiritual maturity. It's being able to hear or see something and go, yeah, it's good, it's true. It's the difference between knowing and believing, right? Like, when we're in the first half of life, we're all like, I believe this, I believe that, and it's all because the pastor gave me a really good sermon or somebody did a really well-crafted Sabbath school lesson. Yeah, I believe that, I believe, right? And in the second half of life, when you're an elder, you know because you've had life experience. I don't need somebody to tell me, or I don't need somebody to show me something to prove it. I know because I've lived it. That's the difference with an elder. That's the big difference. I've lived it. I know God's mercy. I know God's merciful. I know God's gracious. I know God's forgiving because I've experienced all of that in my lifetime, over and over and over and over again. And now I know. I don't believe it anymore. I know. Yeah. So there's some really key factors about that. And we need them. I have to say that the one big blessing I had early on, trying to start men's groups up, is an older man came to my church. He was a true elder, a spiritual elder, and he had been mentored by a really beautiful older man again. A really great guy. He got the Order of Australia medal. A guy by the name of Wes Carter, done a lot of men's work in WA. And that man saw what I was doing. He said, I'm coming to your church. I'm moving churches. I'm going to come be the elder of your church. At that stage, I didn't even know what he was talking about. And he rolled up, man, and he just worked magic. You know, like all of a sudden he was linking all of us together and doing things I didn't even think were possible, and he still is. And, you know, and what he's done is he set about making the other men in my church elders. You know, he got busy bringing out of them what was gold about them, their father blessing, affirming energy, you know. And when you're known as a church that blesses, you know, that's an amazing thing, you know. We can be known for many things, but if you're known as a church that blesses well, that's an incredible thing. You know, people are attracted to that, you know. Everybody at the end of the day is looking for acceptance, affirmation, blessing, because that's power. And every man has got to resolve his power struggle somewhere. You know, if you've never been told that you're enough, if you've never been told that you've got what it takes, right? If you've never had that, you're going to search for that and search for that to the end of your life. That's resolving the power issue. And if we don't get that done, if we're not doing that in our churches for our men, I think we're in trouble, you know. I think we've got to help men resolve that power issue, you know. Letting them know you're enough, you have what it takes, you've got it. Otherwise, if you've never been affirmed at that level, it's like bigger and better things all the time, you know. Living in the ego, living in the private self, trying to resolve that sort of stuff. Michael, any other questions?
Is there a book or some material about
I'm really reluctant to suggest books, because Adventists like to read stuff written by Adventists. Unfortunately, we don't have anything written by an Adventist, especially not on men's work. I think Eldridge is a really good is a good choice, like as an entry level, you know, like Eldridge. Even Steve Biddulph is really good. You know, he touches on those. He does the new manhood. He's a secular writer, but he refers to God a bit. A lot of the really good writing on men's work is probably, you know, guys like Robert Bly do really good stuff around that, but it's controversial, you know, because a lot of Christian Adventist men, particularly Adventist men, you know, they want to read Adventist stuff, you know. So yeah. I didn't get on the initiation. I was talking about all the different cultures around the world. They're all wanting to teach 4 out of the 5 things. You're not in control. You check this in yourself, right? See how this sits in yourself. If you had to accept, you're not in control. Your life's not about you. You're going to die. You're not important. Right? These are all hard truths, right? You're not in control. And life is hard. You know, imagine trying to accept those truths. You know, like this is why there's actually a process that we do with the young men sometimes. And what we do is we actually get them to stand in ask a young man that's struggling with something in his ego, right? We actually ask the man to stand in the middle, stand with his eyes closed, right? And we get 5 men to just repeat those words to him, right? And just walk around him. And what he gets to do, right, is with his eyes closed, and the men are all speaking in different tones, right? What he gets to do with his eyes closed, he turns and he faces the message that is just giving him the most energy, you know, that's getting him really mad or really scared or really sad, you know, and get him to face that message and just look it in the eye, you know. And there's something that happens for him when he's able to look that thing in the eye and go, you know what? I really struggle to hear I'm not important. There's something to work on there, you know. That's something to work on, you know. Because if he doesn't beat that out of his ego, he's going to struggle for the rest of his life, you know. He's going to be seeking that importance. He hides it from himself and he pretends he doesn't have it, and then it's running the show subconsciously. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
I was going to say from my perspective, there's Carl Faze, he talks on Light FM, Daily Nudge, 1 Minute Coach. He has a lot of material out that he has a specific series that's just for men and a workbook that goes with it. And we've used that at my church. But
What was that one called?
Carl Faze, K-A-R-L. He's a common factor in our local Christian state.
Oh, okay. What's his last name?
Faze. F-A-S-E.
Oh, yeah.
So he has some good material out. It's one Michael.
It's through Light FM. Here in Melbourne.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I'm always interested to read what whatever's out there. Anyway, if somebody's found a good program, because that's one of the hardest things about running men's groups is I write a lot of curriculum myself. You know, different things that, you know, we've worked on truth telling, power, mission and purpose, sexuality, all kinds of different things, you know. So we run weekends for guys on mission and purpose and sexuality as well. That's really, really good for guys to get to the bottom of some of that stuff as well.
In his DVDs, he's got one on mates, generosity,
Oh, yeah.
pornography, trust, family, where you fit family stewardship, all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
he sort of deals with quite a lot of stuff that men generally deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I think on a sort of an Australia-wide level, you know, I think we are coming to a place where men's issues are really becoming very topical, you know. Like, I've noticed probably more shows on men's issues these days, you know, especially around unfairness in, the courts with family, settlements and child, the way the courts work with restraining orders. Restraining orders, you know, they're really bad, you know. Like a man gets separated from his wife and taken 3 months to see his children again. A lot of guys kill themselves over that time, you know. And then...
I'm not sure that's being very well received, though, always.
no.
The courts are still very feminist in that point of view, still pertaining things to the mother of the children.
Absolutely,
Under
man.
under any regards.
Yeah.
The only woman has to say that he's doing something bad.
Yeah.
Orders,
Yeah.
no visitations.
Yeah.
We saw the backlash with the Red Pill, the movie.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's a good eye-opening. I keep thinking one day I'm going to get bombarded with one of those things, you know, a bunch of feminists, you know, knocking down the door. But if this was a women's ministries gathering, this is truth, man. If this is a women's ministries gathering, there'd be 60 women in here, you know. I mean, I want to honour you guys for turning up, you know, like, because that's quite heartening, you know, to see men turning up and going, yeah, okay, you know, what can we learn from each other, you know? I'm not fond of this kind of a scenario too. I would much rather sit in a circle with you guys and actually hear from each one of you. I would, you know, that's my mode of learning from men and working with men is sitting in circle and us all talking. Each man, equal amount of time, you know, let's talk. I know every man has a gift to give. That's my whole thing about every man has a story, you know. And that's where my passion is with men's ministries. I love hearing men's stories. It doesn't matter who the guy is. I know he's got a story. If he's angry, bitter, twisted, there's a reason he's that way. And give him enough time to get safe and he'll share that, you know. and you can unlock a man, and I just love seeing what men are capable of, how loving, affirming, how strong they can be, you know, when they're in their full power, you know. And so that's what drives me as well, you know, seeing men just completely step into their fullness of who they can be as a man, you know. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. There's a big problem we got with the farmers in WA. They're like that, you know. He struggled just to get them together for have a breakfast once a month, you know, as they just want to suffer in silence, suffer alone, you know. Yep. And that's why I keep talking about safety, always bringing it back to safety. You know, this printout I gave here, so straight over on the back of the first page, this is a little contract I use for the guys when we get together. So it's got the group commitments there, you know, and it's quite strong language, but the guidelines below, which the following documents are those guidelines explained plus a couple more, but these are all about what creates the safety. And you know, if you want to do any work with men, and I always say do it in a circle. Don't, you know, like I said, Michael asked me to come and speak like this, right? But I would never address men like this in WA. I would sit in a circle. And for the sake of Henry, you know, we were doing this camera work, but I would say let's sit in a circle. I want to see every man's face, and I want you to be able to see every man's face. That's safe, right? So, I mean, like these guys here, they wouldn't know if you were laughing behind his back. They wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know if they were laughing behind your back, right? And every man is sitting there all the time. You know, this is my experience. A lot of men are sitting there going, I don't like not knowing what's going on behind me, right? I need to know, right? So when we sit in a circle, that's the safest way, you know. You see every man's face. But yeah, I'd actually like to go through those guidelines. I think they're really important. And probably if we went through those longer explanations, I'm not going to read them. I'm not going to read them all out. But I just want to give you a quick overview about safety. I reckon these are worth going through. You know, no judgment, no shame. I mean, just saying that to men as soon as they walk in the door. No judgment, no shame, no could-ofs, no should-ofs, no going back and reassessing the past. It is done. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you how you should have lived your life better. And I always say, if you are the man that is facilitating a group, that is your job as a facilitator of that group. If you see anybody coming up with a shaming comment, just bang, knock it on the head, mate, because you will lose the whole group. One man gets shamed, you lost the whole group, man. You got to knock that out. And I'm saying, you just need to say, there's no place for that. That's all. You're not looking to put down the guy that's shaming the other guy, right? You're just saying, no place, mate. Do not interrupt another man when he's speaking. You know, I remember the first one time we had a man come and sit in a circle with us, and he'd been in church his whole life. He sat down. We said, "Check in, mate," and you know, love around here. Let's check in, right? He spoke for probably 2 or 3 minutes, right, and then at the end of his check-in, he just burst into tears and shot out of the room. So, and we got a big thing about not rescuing people too. We don't run after people, you know, you give them their time, right? So we let him go, but after a while he came back. And then in the break I said to him, "You shot out of the room, Matty, you're right." He said, "I have not had that many people stop and listen to me talk for probably 10 years. I've never had that many people stop and listen to me uninterrupted talk." And he said, he goes, "It just got me that emotional, I just couldn't hold it anymore." Crazy, but that's why we don't interrupt a man when he's talking. I statements. when we're talking, when I'm talking, you know, if I say, you know, like, you know, when you're feeling like crap and, you know, you just go home and you hit your missus, or you just go and look at a whole heap of porn. I'm talking for you guys, right? I use I statements. You know, when I'm angry, I go home and I've hit my wife and I've Googled porn and right? That's different. I'm talking for me, right? So men are very sensitive about other people saying you know, we, you know, they're trying to be inclusive, but it's not helpful. Let a man own his own thing. Don't you know? And so I will always say, there's a very nice way of doing that. You either just say, who does that, or you say, yeah, and he'll get you. He'll go, oh, yeah, me. And that's what I do. No advice giving without first asking. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I actually find that a lot of men are very sensitive to being given advice. Men are prideful, you know. And if a man wants advice, let him ask for it. Let him ask for when he wants advice. And if you think you're pretty wise and you got something to share with him, then show him respect and say, I think I've got something to offer, can I offer to you? And I've seen guys do it in groups with me, and sometimes the man just goes, no, I don't want to hear it. I'm not in the mood to hear it right now, you know. But if you're respectful and you ask, really, really helpful. And it gives that man a chance to feel respected in that moment, you know. Counter stories, really important thing. We notice that what happens with a lot of men is, you know, a guy will tell us a significant story. It might be the first time he's ever shared that story in his life. And another guy will jump in and go, oh, that's nothing, mate. I do that all the time. That's happened all the time to me, right? And then the guy that just took the massive risk to tell his story, he just got completely made like his story was a nothing, right? He just took a massive risk. This guy just ran in and said, I do that all the time. That's nothing, right? No counter stories. Always say to men, if you got a story like that, fine, hold on to it. You know, it's valuable, but don't tell it right on the back end of this guy's story. Let him. That could have been the biggest risk he's taken for the last 10 or 15 years of his life. Let him have the moment. Don't touch another man if he's in an emotional state. Like, you know, when a guy's in like, do you mind if I touch you for a second? Do you mind if I touch you for a second? Yeah? And so say if you were in a really emotional state and I came to you and I said, no, it's all right, mate. You know, you hang in there. You know what that says? That says it's okay. Just close it down, mate. Just close it down. Just shut it up. It's okay. You know, for some men, it'll be all right. But for a lot of men, what that actually ends up doing is just shuts him down. He's just taken a risk to get some really heavy stuff out. Let him have the moment. You know, don't touch him. Or if you, again, same sort of thing. You want to touch him? Ask. You know, just say, do you mind? You know, if I come for you. Women are the worst for that. You know, sometimes you run co-gender groups. Women just shoot in hugs and, you know, they can't help themselves there. But anyway, but men do like to have this space. Always speak directly to another man. There's always a lot of covert language. You know, it's like some guys in the group like to, you know, not own up to things, or, you know, or there's some people here that are arrogant and rude. If there's a guy in that group that you think's arrogant and rude, then just say to him, you're arrogant and rude. And we've got processes to work that out. You can do what we call a clearing process. And the two men can sort that out. And I've seen guys, huge anger, running, get them up, stand them up in the middle of the group, go through the clearing process, and they come out and they go, beautiful, thank you, let's move on. It's actually contrary to popular belief that men in conflict can actually grow closer to each other. And I'm sure a lot of you would have been in the playground when you were kids. Two kids, butt heads, they either leave each other alone. Most of the time this is what had happened. They either leave each other alone for good, never bother each other again, or they become best mates. Isn't that true, right? And for some reason as men, we've forgotten about that, and we think, oh, if we butt heads with another man, that's it. That's not true. Conflict is actually very, very healthy for men. And as a matter of fact, when we run the 6-week program after this initiation weekend, we run a 6-week program, one of the things we actually get the guys to do is they look around the room and they go, and we ask them to say, choose the man you trust the least, choose the man you trust the most, right? So first of all they go, okay, so say who's the man you trust the most and why? So they choose the man they trust the most and why. Then we say, right, choose now who's the man that you trust the least and why? And they have to sit across a man and say, you're the man I trust the least. And then what they do is they say to him, so what is it about him that you trust him the least, right? He said, well, I've made up a story about him, because they don't know each other. Half of them don't know each other. Oh, I make up a story, he's not trustworthy, or he's this or that. And then we ask him, how's that true about you too? Because men always project their stories onto each other, right? They always project their stories onto one another, you know, like, I think he's a liar, I think he's... Well, that's because I've seen it in myself. But he doesn't, we often don't have a chance to own that. Older men know exactly what I'm talking about when I say it. You know, an older man can see that in himself and he can go, yeah, I can own that. And you know what happens? The guy that they trusted the least at the end of the night, they are inseparable. They are just talking to each other like this. They got their arm around each other and they're yakking away like this, and you can't even get them out the door. You go, I'm shutting the doors, you know, and they're yakking on forever because they know, give them an opportunity, they can use their conflict to become much closer. Commitment to confidentiality. It's just a simple thing at the start of the night. Just say to the guys, hey, is everyone prepared just to commit to confidentiality by raising your hand and say whatever happens here or is said here stays here? That is the simplest way of getting safety in a group. Obviously people break that a lot, but it's the ideal of it that people love building off, you know. And then the final one is, give everybody a time limit that they can talk to, you know. If you have one guy talking for 2 minutes and you got one guy talking for 20 minutes, there's no equality in the group, it never works. I find when you say to guys, hey, we're going to check in, everyone's got 2 minutes, right? So when it comes to your turn, you go around the circle, when it comes to your turn, know what you want to say it quick, you know, like be concise about what you want to say, right? You're no more important than anybody in the room, and that goes for the facilitator. And the one thing that I haven't put down here is when I facilitate a group, I model everything first. I never ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. I did that tonight, you know, when I talked about checking in and being authentic around my feelings. I said, this is how I feel, right? You know, when we do integrity round, I'll be the first person to actually say, you know, whether I'm in or out of integrity, I'll be the first one to stand up. If you're a leader, you're the model. If you are not ready to model and put yourself out there first, or as the saying goes, if you think serving is beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. That is true for doing men's work. You cannot ask anybody to do the thing that you will not model yourself first. You do that, if you check in deep, the other men will check in deep. If you go worry alike on your integrity and your agreements and your core values, they'll go there. If you go hard into your introspection, you know, looking at yourself and working out what's going on, if you bless well, they will follow you in. I think it's worth having that if you ever want to run a group. The front page is about container building. There's a lot of value in this as well. You know, it just talks about container building is doing men's circles. That's what it is. But yeah, it's just talking about why you do it. You know, the importance of the group guidelines. And I can't say this enough too. If somebody breaks the group guidelines, you've got to be prepared to step them out. And I've had to do it in the past. You know, I never want to exclude a man, but if there is a guy in there that is talking over people and going way over, you know, and thinking that he, well, I use polite language, but if he thinks he's the biggest guy in the room, right, you're going to have to, for the safety of every other man in the room, stand him up and say, can I talk to you outside? And say, here's the guidelines, and these are here for safety, and if you don't want to keep to the guidelines, then you are making this place unsafe, and you have to let him go. You've got to sacrifice one to keep it safe for the rest. But that's, you know, I recently heard about a men's group where a guy got really unsafe. The facilitator said to the man, you're acting in a very unsafe way, you're not keeping to the guidelines of this group. He said, no, he said, I'm fine. And he said to him, well, unless you're going to make a commitment to stick to this, he said, I'm going to ask you to leave. Now, I saw a man that was sitting in that group later on, about a week later, and he came up to me and he said, he goes, I don't want to tell you what happened, but he said a guy had to leave the group. He didn't know I knew the story. And he said, but, he said, when that facilitator told that man to leave, he said, I was sitting in my chair thinking, I don't know if I'm going to come back here or not. He said, when I saw him take that man out, he said, I knew this was a safe place, and he said, I knew this was a place I can come and do my work. So you don't, you know, it's a bit of an issue, I think, in the church. We've got a lot of rescuers. Pastors particularly are rescuers. They want to rescue, you know, and I say that as a generalization. There's a lot of pastors that are rescuers. You know, it's trying to heal a lot of our own insecurities by solving other people's problems, you know. And so rescuing is quite dangerous, and it's actually more about the person doing the rescuing than anything else. It's about what makes them feel good. So I always say, you know, be careful of your rescuer, you know, and make sure it's not online. If you're going to run any men's groups, don't let your rescuer off the chain. Don't start running around telling everyone it's okay, smoothing over disagreements. There is processes for that stuff, you know. And a lot of the time when men can stand face to face, they can work it out themselves, you know. My time must be up, Michael, I'm sure. Well, I'm happy if there's any more questions. I don't know how long you guys want to go for. Yeah, that's a good idea, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Okay, well, yeah, I can say thank you for having me. Is there any words you want to say too, Michael?
Thank you very much. It took us into the deep waters.
Yes, we plunged in.
I hope you're scared. I'm scared of you.
Well, and look, here's the other, my offering too is that for any of you guys, you know, if I'm happy to give you my email address, I'm happy to chat. If there's any resources that you want or some things that you would like to try, you know, I'm more than happy to share that with you guys, you know. And all I can do is encourage you to email me and ask, and then it's up to you guys to see what you want to do. But I'm putting that out there as a free offering, you know. I've got plenty of men's group resources if you want.
So don't forget the recording is here, right in train notes watching. So that's where you see the recording of the worship tonight. And if you have other people that would like to watch it, that's where it should be. Let's close with a prayer, and yeah, we can stay after this meeting.
Sure.
Father in heaven, thank you for this great night, Lord, and just to come together as men that love Jesus, to understand the role that we have in supporting each other, in helping each other, being vulnerable and opening up to other men like us. It's so important. Father, we want to thank you for Shannon, for the work that he does, and we want to pray a special blessing upon him, that you will continue to be with him, to strengthen him, Lord, and to do this work that he does in a mighty way. be with us, Lord, and give us a good Sabbath. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Yeah.
For coming, hope to see you. Have a good Sabbath.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd actually, if any of you guys have got some time, I'd love to hear what's going on. If
Well, I guess we can sit here.
yeah, no, that'd be great. Yeah, no, I'd love to hear about what's going on.